Merry Christmas, everybody. Celebrating the Feast of the Holy Family, we're paying attention to that time in Jesus' life, the long time, the majority, that there's almost nothing written about in the Gospels. This is the hidden life of Jesus in the home at Nazareth for those 30 years between Bethlehem and when he began his public ministry at the baptism. So his life at Nazareth with Mary and Joseph is hidden and pretty quiet. And like I said, we only have this one story that cuts in when he's 12 years old. But this is a significant time, a really important place, because this is where Jesus goes from this infant who's born at Christmas to the man who begins his mission to save the world. And this is the important part. The place, the situation, like the method chosen by God to raise up his son as the Savior, all of this happens, he prepares in a family, in a home. Okay, the family and home is holy and chosen by God, and it's so humble and it's easy to take for granted, but this is why we call Christian homes and families domestic churches. Okay, domestic like a house, domestic churches. I was just at a wedding on Friday, and it was over on the east side of the state, and there was another priest preaching, and he just pointed this out. It was a good reminder. He was talking to the couple, and he said, once you're married, you're a new family. And so today, what is created is a new church, a new domestic church. So I think maybe even if you never heard that term, your family's supposed to love God together. And I think you have some sense we want to grow in this. So I want to give you some specifics to hopefully give you some focus and direction. If we want to learn what it is to be a domestic church, then there's actually a lot to learn just from looking at a regular church, a regular parish. So this is an oversimplified definition, but here's what a parish is, okay? A parish is a place that is set apart. It belongs to God, and it's filled with his presence. He dwells with us here in the Blessed Sacrament. It's a community and an organized society. We have responsibilities. There's a system. It has to function in this way. It isn't just like a big conglomeration, but it's an organized society in some way. And it's for three things. Like I said, this is way oversimplified, but we want it to be clear. The parish is for the worship of God and for the formation of disciples. And then I was having a hard time finding a single word for this, and then somebody gave me one after the last Mass. But it's in another language. So what I was trying to encapsulate was the parish is for celebration and for rest, and it's to be a home, and it's where we're fed and healed, and it's our shelter and refuge, and we're at peace here. All that, warmth. It's a place where we receive life, divine life in the sacraments, where we can experience this deep rest in prayer with God and safety, and enjoy the fruits of community. So the word is, and few of you will be able to spell this, but the word is a Dutch word, and it's gezellig. Yeah, and it has a G at the beginning and the end. So it's spelled gezellig, but it's gezellig. And it's all that warmth and rest and joy and all that stuff together. I'm a little bit Dutch. My last name is Dutch, so I feel authorized to use that word. But it's all those things all together. So if that's what a parish is, then what about a domestic church? First, a domestic church is a place that is set apart, that belongs to God, that's filled with his presence. Yes, in a different way than in the Blessed Sacrament. But I don't know if you ever thought of your home as a place that belongs to God, that's set apart, that's different from the rest of the world. This is one of the things that's involved in house blessings. House blessings are it's a prayer asking for the Lord to make this place holy, to fill it with his presence. It's kind of a baptism for the home, so it removes the residue of sin, yours or the people who lived there before you. But it's like a dedication of the house. We say when we bless the house, Jesus is the king of this home and nobody else. Those who belong to Jesus belong here. And those who are the enemies of Jesus may not enter, So first, the domestic church is a holy place within the walls of our house. It's also a community, an organized society. Yeah, we have responsibilities to each other. We have chores to make the house run. But the thing I want to point out here is that every family has a culture. And when you're living in it, it's really hard to be specific and to name what your family culture is. Usually it takes an outsider or something like that. It takes some distance to see. But you've had this experience, when you go over to somebody else's house and you realize, oh, your family's culture is different than mine. Because whatever, things are very uncomfortable. I just remember going over to somebody's house, 10 years old, hanging out with one of my buddies, and he was like, hey, do you want some ice cream? And I was like, yeah, I want some ice cream. And so he went to the freezer and got ice cream and put it in bowls, and we were eating it. And when his mom came in, I hid my bowl. Because I thought, wow, we are so bad right now. And she didn't blink. Because where I grew up, we ask before we get ice cream, you know? So you just find these differences as you go. If you don't, your culture, your family culture is what specifically you celebrate and elevate and hold up, and the things that are not acceptable, the things that are really put down, the things that we do not do here. A combination of those two things mostly makes up what a family's culture is. It's important actually to pick out those things and to name them, because otherwise, like, there will be a culture, and if you don't choose it, if you're not like working at it, then you'll fall into something. Now, there's no perfect one, that's okay, but it's just like what's important to you? What do you want to highlight and elevate? Okay, then we said the parish is for those three things. So a family also is for these three things. Your family and your home, it's for the worship of God. There's like so much room for creativity here, but we call it a domestic church for a reason. Like people should know, hey, in that home, God is worshiped in there. So part of it is like the attitude and the culture and the surroundings that we have. Some of it is like the hard work of discipline and routine. I know parents got to pick their battles, but I just want to encourage you like this. Let some sort of daily prayer be a hill that you die on. And I mean more than just praying before meals. Some sort of daily prayer. It can take all kinds of forms. You can experiment and trial and error, but the rosary or reading scripture or a little time in silence, praying the Angelus, the examination of conscience in the middle of the day, morning prayers, night prayers before bed. Like you got to pick something, and then you got to do it. Otherwise, our worship of God, our being a domestic church, ends up being lip service. We're not going to do it perfectly. That's okay. But like I said, there's a ton of room for creativity here, all kinds of things. Even something as simple as in our house, before we go to bed, we kiss the statue of Our Lady, or we kiss the crucifix. Just something like that. It doesn't have to be very complicated. It's also, the domestic church is also for formation. And the family, you know this, it's a school of charity, sometimes with books, sometimes with a talk or something, but most of the time it's just practice. And what's tough about being in a school of charity in your home is that there are no drills. Everything is a live fire exercise, and you don't practice saying, I forgive you, because you'll need to do it someday. No, you have to forgive right now because somebody got hurt and somebody did something wrong, you know? So there's a lot on the line. I would just give you these two things to remember as you work on being a school of charity and formation for your children. Because there are all kinds of things you're going to teach them. How to be patient and decent human beings and generous and all that stuff. But I would say the first one is forgiveness. Parents, of course, I know you give your children a good example, and sometimes you fail. And so the temptation there can be that I will lose my place as the teacher if my faults are seen. They won't respect me or they won't listen to me anymore. That's not true. When you fail, just be the first one to say, I did not do well. I did wrong here, and I'm sorry, and I need to be forgiven. To give an example of acknowledging your faults and asking for forgiveness is maybe a more important thing for your children than for you to be a glowing, radiant, always perfect parent. Okay, so forgiveness is one, and then the other one, and this is sweet, this is the lesson of charity, of real love. And it's learned almost exclusively in families. That is to love another person without getting anything back. It's easy to look generous, but really be working something so that you get what you're looking for. But in your family, this is the place where we get to learn, and it's sometimes a difficult thing, where we learn that it's good to love the other because it's good they're alive and for no other reason, because they're worthy of love, and so I will love you. This is if you walk outside the doors of your house, there are not many places where you can learn that. So that's why I want to offer that to you. The last thing that a parish is and that a domestic church is, of course, is that word cheselech. That is home and rest and restoration and joy and celebration. But this has to be something that's like protected, because your home is like a sacred thing. Your family is a holy thing. So that means, like boundaries for work, like when you have family time, it's worth, if things from the outside are starting to invade and take what does not belong to them, then you got to be the one to set the line and say, okay, this far and no farther, because this is my life and that's my work. This is essential and that's kind of optional. So those kind of boundaries to like defend the integrity of your family and your home, but also these kind of hard things that you have to do sometimes for the sake of your children and, again, the integrity of your family. I don't know if this is a controversial example, but this is the one I thought of. Like if you have, I don't know, it's a common thing. If you have one of your brothers is living with his girlfriend, okay, what do you do? Then okay, well, you're trying to teach your children what is love, what is faithfulness, what is marriage, what does God want for us? So you can tell them, hey, we love you very much, but what you're doing is confusing for my children. And so we gotta have a little distance, or maybe like you set up a boundary or something like that. This isn't like to be like overly sheltering or something like that, or to keep people from ever seeing that, oh, maybe some people live like in a different way than what Jesus teaches us. But the point is that your home is sacred, and you rule it in place of Jesus. And so you get to make those lines and make these decisions. Sometimes people will be offended even, but it's not to offend, it's to protect love, So I'm telling you all of this because a parish is only as strong as the families that make it up. So I want to give you this little thought experiment. And this can be kind of like a brutal examination of conscience for your domestic church. But if you imagine tomorrow there were no more priests and no more churches and no more like other Christian families, if it was just you and your family, if there was no like outside thing to say, hey, you should pray, or hey, you need to read scripture, or hey, you need to like serve God and live a life of charity. If there was nothing on the outside to call you to that, then this is the question: how long would faith last in your family? Would it be weeks or would it be generations? This is, like I said, this is not to condemn or anything, and this is not an evaluation of how good or effective or perfect your family is. And maybe some of you are thinking of your children who don't go to church and maybe don't believe in God. Okay, you can be a perfect parent and have a perfect family, and that can still happen. So it's not evaluating that. But it's really just to look at this one thing. How deeply ingrained is Jesus in the fiber of your home and in your family? Now, all of this stuff is great, but, and this is the last thing, I just want to note that there can be an unintended effect from what we're talking about today. Do you feel intimidated, like, oh, there's more for us to do, but we're already like so spent and stretched? Or you might feel discouraged or hopeless and think, well, Father Rob's talking to these perfect families, but he's not talking to my family. That can never happen to my family. Comparison creeps in very quickly, but don't look at Instagram. If there's a family that discourages you because they have what you want and you're so bad in comparison to them, just go to Meijer with them sometime, Nobody bats 1,000 at Meijer. There's meltdowns and somebody snaps and there's impatience and all that stuff. Like, this is a reality. There's no perfect families. But here's what I want to offer you, especially if you're discouraged or hopeless or anything like that. All this takes faith and hope. Like, you believe the Lord can heal cancer. You believe that he will turn bread into his body. Then believe also what he can do with your family, your specific family, with brokenness and wounds and difficulties and sin and all that stuff. Like, it calls for faith out of us and hope. So have hope. Do not be discouraged. Do not compare. Don't let that creep in. This is what I want to leave you with. What an honor that the Lord has picked as his chosen instrument to teach the world love, to bring his gospel, to bring light and new life What an honor that as his chosen instrument for these things, he has chosen you and your home and your family.